The New York City Opera, as you know, has gone out of business through every fault of its own, unfortunately. But we're here to be guided through the first 10 years of that institution by someone who is too young to have been around for those 10 years, but I remember some of those 10 years, and we have people in this audience whose names I won't mention, who were there all the way back in the mid-1940s when it all got going. And it's a fascinating story, and there isn't anyone in the world, I think, better to tell it than Corey Ellison.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vocal Record Collectors Society, for inviting me back. I always look forward to being here. And thank you, all my many friends from New York City Opera and elsewhere. And Joe, I think you got it maybe a little bit wrong, because I think really the reason for this crowd is not me, but New York City Opera. So, yeah. Anyway. I'm not going to talk a lot, actually, because we have so much really great music to listen to. But I will give a little intro along the lines of what I said in the blurb that was issued by the Vocal Records Collectors Society, that it's no longer possible to buy a ticket to New York City Opera, and we're all very much poorer for that. But it doesn't mean City Opera is dead. Anybody who was at City Center this past February 21st for our 70th anniversary concert knows that. And just as we were there that night, we're here tonight to celebrate New York City Opera, not to mourn. I'm a part of what we call the NYC diaspora, and we're a proud bunch that continue to breathe our beloved company's unique style and savvy and spirit into opera worldwide through our singing, our directing, our conducting, and all sorts of other behind-the-scenes work. My own mission, I see very much in our multi-generational family, is to keep the NYC flame alive by sharing some of its glorious history, and I'm so happy to be here and do that tonight. As most of us know, it all started with visionary civic leaders. Can you imagine? In 1943, Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia and his cohorts willed the People's Opera into being, with the stated purpose of offering opera to a wide audience at reasonable ticket prices. At the time, just 75 cents to $2 were the ticket prices. So this, folks, was the beginning of the long City Opera tradition of taking lemons and making lemonade. Damn good lemonade, though. Conductor Laszlo Halas, our first general director, turned City Opera's low budget into a virtue, making the company a vital showcase for promising young singers, particularly Americans, and presenting an innovative mix of repertory, eventually including new American operas. Precious few of the artists that graced City Opera's stage during its first season still walk among us. There are two that I know of, as well as three of the singers that we'll be hearing tonight from subsequent seasons. And we're still mourning the very fresh loss of one who was there in the first season, our beloved maestro, Julius Rudel. The most important single figure in City Opera's history, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that, no disrespect meant to anybody else. So tonight I'm presenting this program in honor of City Opera's 70th anniversary and in loving memory of our dear maestro, who was there from the beginning and will be with us as long as the name of City Opera is remembered. So in this program, I'm going to focus on artists who sang during City Opera's first decade, and that's a period that's a lot less known than the company's next quarter of century, which is usually regarded as the golden age of city opera. But I'm sure you'll agree that there's plenty of gold in the first decade that we're going to hear tonight. Even within this one decade, it was fiendishly difficult to choose which artists to play for you. And there are a good many, actually, that I was sorry to cut from the short list, but I just had to for reasons of time. So I've concentrated on mostly those singers who became city opera mainstays, and with the exception of a few very notable short-term visitors. And you'll see too that the rep is going to be mostly standard rep, as it was mostly during the first decade of city opera. They were just taking baby steps then and sort of getting into adventurous repertory. So without further ado, let's plunge into the first season. City Opera opened its doors at the still thriving City Center of Music and Drama on West 55th Street on February 21st, 1944. It was a one-week season comprising performances of 3 operas named after their heroines, Tosca, Martha, and Carmen. So during that season, there was one big star that people were pretty excited about, and that was on opening night. Tosca was sung by the Philadelphian mezzo Dusolina Giannini, sister of Vittorio Giannini, the distinguished American composer whose opera Taming of the Shrew, City Opera, later premiered. Now, at this point, Giannini had already sung at La Scala, at Covent Garden, at the Met, but she really jumped in and thought it was a wonderful thing to help out this fledgling company, and we're so glad she did. This is the first recording that we're going to hear is from Tosca, Visitarte, a radio transmission from the same year, 1944, but from San Francisco Opera, conducted by Gaetano Merola. Opera's first Carmens were headlined by someone who we now think of as a star, but who wasn't really a star in the US at the time, the Belarusian-born Jenny Turrell, who emigrated to the US shortly before that. She had actually already sung a few Met performances in 1937, but wasn't yet well known in the States. But she purportedly had already sung over 200 Carmens at the Opera Comique in Paris, the place where Carmen premiered, actually. She went on to become quite an important singer and sang a lot at the Met. Didn't stay at City Opera very long, and was very closely associated with both Leonard Bernstein and later James Levine, became a very distinguished teacher at Aspen and at Juilliard. But now, let's hear her sing the second act duet with Don José. Her Don José in this recording, as it was the Ukrainian-born French-trained tenor Joseph Rogachevsky, who sang some Wagner, but really is best known for his French repertoire. He was a very highly regarded Werther. And after World War II, went back to Europe and was the general director of the Théâtre de Monet in Brussels. So this recording is actually an amazing recording. It's not the best copy, unfortunately. If anyone has a better copy, give me a shout. But it is actually taken from the broadcast of Carmen that was done at City Opera, the first Saturday matinee of City Opera in 1944, February 26th, 1944. And parts of it were broadcast live. So this is that recording.
We are bringing you the second act of the opera Carmen from the New York City Center of Music and Drama.
Amazing to think that that was live, the first season of City Opera. The Zuniga in that performance of Carmen, and also the Angelotti in the Toscas that first season, was the Ukrainian-born bass Sidor Belarski, who emigrated to the US in 1930. He had a huge international career in both opera and concert, favorite of many major conductors, and also became a teacher and a preeminent collector and disseminator and interpreter of Jewish music, cantorial music, folk, traditional. He was apparently known as the Yiddish Frank Sinatra. I don't know exactly how to interpret that, but let's assume it was a compliment. And here is a very interesting recording of him singing a non-operatic excerpt, a Russian folk song, In the Fields of Bessarabia.
Sehr viel Lieder hab ich gekannt und alle sennen mir der Ressen. Nur ein Lied ist mir verblieben, ich will es keinmal nicht vergessen. Die Felder von Bessarabien, Land von Wein und Land von Treue. Als ich der Mann sich in deine Toll, is nur ich wein, ich badoie.
That goes on for several verses. In the Carmen, that first week of the history of New York City Opera, there were 2 Frasquitas and 1 Micaela sung by New York's own Regina Resnick of blessed memory. What can we say about Regina Resnick? She needs very little introduction. She, after singing those 2 little roles, not so little really, Micaela or Frasquita, but she sang Santuzza in Cavalleria, but then she didn't stay long, and I don't really need to tell you where she went, but we had her first. This live recording that we're going to hear was made a mere 3 weeks after her City Opera debut. It documents her winning performance in the semifinals of the Met Auditions of the Air on March 12, 1944. Her son, my good friend Michael Philip Davis, tells me that by her own admission, she was nervous and the recitative is sharp. Therefore, we'll start with the aria. Wilfrid Pelletier conducting the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, Ernani in Volami.
Oh
about Regina Resnick is, unlike a lot of other singers who went on to fame and glory from City Opera, she always came back. She came back in 1954 as a guest in the party scene of Fledermaus. She came back in 1950 and 1958 to sing Carmen with us. In 1990, she played Madame Armfeldt in A Little Night Music, which was telecast from New York City Opera. And in the new millennium, she actually narrated a selection in our Vox Festival of New Works. She participated in many outreach panels and and she was at countless performances over the years and was always cheering us on. So thank you, Regina Resnick. So, not a bad first season for New York City Opera. The critics thought it was good, the audiences thought it was good, and the Met thought it was good. They immediately poached away Jenny Turrell, Martha Lipton, Hugh Thompson, Thomas Hayward, and as they would continue to do over the years. And I think part of City Opera's function was also feeling proud to have launched so many singers who went on to great careers. The next season was also a short one, a little longer, spring 1944, and that season saw City Opera's first Traviata with quite a cast. The first Violetta at City Opera was Dorothy Kirsten, a New Jersey-born protege of Grace Moore. That was 1944. In 1945, she made her debut as Mimi at the Met, and that began a 30-year relationship with her and the Met. But before she went to the Met, she did sing Manon Lescaut at City Opera in fall 1944, and here's a recording of In quelle trine morbide from 1947.